Pittsburgh Steelers by then will hopefully have some contracts in place, hopefully have more coming within the next 24 hours after that. Let's dive into that. Cam Sutton, Terrell Edmonds, Larry Ogunjobi, Robert Spillane, Devin Bush. There are plenty of names for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Their free agency list, I believe, is 24 players. I went through them. I'd say about 14 of them are guys that they will contemplate bringing back. At least my list included Cam Sutton, Larry Ogunjobi, Mason Rudolph, Devin Bush, Robert Spillane, DeMonte KZ, Terrell Edmonds, Derek Watt, Chris Wormley, Miles Boykin, Steven Sims, Benny Snell Jr., Zach Gentry, William Jackson III, and Marcus Allen. Let's go through them.
That was your list of who you thought they were bringing back?
No, that's my list of who they will contemplate bringing back. There's other names out there like J.C. Hassenauer, which I think you signed for absolutely nothing. I think that's a very easy one. James Pierre. I don't think they bring back James Pierre. I think that project's dead. But that's their whole list. I have 9 of those 14 guys. I have 9 staying, 5 leaving. Do you want to go through them one-on-one? You want to tell me who you think stays? All right, let's hit them. Let's hit them a couple at a time. Cam Sutton, Larry Ogunjobi, I think are the 2 biggest names on the defensive side of the ball that I think people expect to be candidates to sign early. Do you think Cam Sutton comes back? Do you think Larry Ogunjobi comes back?
I think Cam does. I don't think Larry does. Cam's just the top priority. I think we've talked about that all off season. It's just one that I don't think they can afford to let slip through their fingers. So I don't think they will. I don't buy a whole lot of the Lions or the Vikings hype, around him maybe making a move for him there. Larry Ogunjobi, I don't know what I was not impressed with Larry Ogunjobi this year, and I know they need depth at that position, but I would just want to know what kind of number they're offering to him and what he's asking for, because it shouldn't. Because he was making a lot more money than I think he probably should make next year.
Yeah. The $8 million was way too high. I agree. My reasoning for him, I have him staying. I think it's a much lower hit this year. I think it's like a $4 million deal, 1 year, maybe 2 years. I just think that if he's not willing, if he's a guy that's like, look, I was supposed to get the bag last year when I signed in Chicago. It didn't work out because of a failed physical. I'd like to go try and do it again this offseason. He's not coming back to Pittsburgh. They're not going to offer him a big contract. But if he's saying, hey, look, I get it. I'm on the decline. I can't stay healthy anymore. I fit in this defense. I have a role. Playing is more important to me right now than making a boatload of money, which I'm never against a guy who's like, I want to go make the bag. Go make the bag, man. If I had the opportunity to go make millions and millions of dollars and I still got to play football somewhere, yeah, cool. I'm going to go do that. If he's open to a team-friendly deal, I think they bring him back on like a $4, maybe $5 million a year deal. Keep it very, very low. A somewhat of a contract where you anticipate drafting a guy, them learning behind Larry O for a year or two, and then stepping in. I've heard Gervon Dexter they brought in for a top 30 visit the other day. I think or they will bring him in for a top 30 visit. I think he's an option in the mid rounds, something like that. For Cam Sutton, I agree with you. I think he stays. I think the hype is there and it's real from these other teams. But unless somebody tosses this guy $12, $13 million a year, which at that moment, that team is nuts. Because if you're going to start the cornerback market at $13 million for Cam Sutton, James Bradbury is going to make $20 million a year. Darius Slay is going to make 25 on a trade at 32 years old. It's just not going to work out well in anybody's favor. But if you could keep it under 10 or even hit 10, if you could go $9-10 million deal and the Steelers just got to match it, I think they will. I think Cam Sutton loves Pittsburgh. He's got a family here, obviously. The Steelers love him. The secondary loves him. I think he is the piece of the puzzle. He's the long-term piece of the puzzle. You draft somebody this offseason and then you say, hey, you and Cam Sutton are the future, and we'll find somebody else behind you, whether that's Levi Wallace for the next couple of years or Akella Witherspoon or whoever. But I think that I agree with you. I think he's an easy, yes, they're bringing him back. Those two should be no surprise. Mason Rudolph, Devin Bush. I think those are both very easy. They're leaving.
Yeah. I just think they'll they'll get better opportunities other places, and I don't know. Just their time with the Steelers seems like it's kind of run its course.
Do you think that Devin Bush actually gets an opportunity somewhere? Do you think that there's a team out there that's going to, in the long list of free agent inside linebackers, do you really think there's a team out there that's going to go, we're going to pay Devin Bush a lot of money?
No, not a lot of money, but he'll get a chance somewhere. He won't,
Yeah.
it won't, no, it won't be a lucrative deal, but he's going to get a fresh start somewhere. He'll go somewhere where, I don't know, just he hasn't built a reputation yet, I guess,
Yeah.
and he can kind of start over. I feel like that's what's best for him and probably best for everyone.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, it's definitely best for everybody. I don't
Mhm.
anticipate at all that this guy's going to go out there and make a career of himself. I just don't think he's that type of guy. But I think he does sign somewhere. If we're being honest, I've said this since the middle of the season. I look at Devin Bush as like a Jalen Smith type of guy, and I hope that he resurrects himself the way that Jalen Smith was able to this season. But I see it becoming a steady decline and then trying to rise back up. But I don't see it. I don't see him and Jalen Smith. Like Jalen Smith always struck me as like a hard worker. You know what I mean? Wasn't that great, asked for too much money, kind of got screwed because of the injury. Devin Bush strikes me as I know who I am. I don't really care. I've already, made a boatload of money. I'm a top 10 pick. It is what it is. I deserve these things. And I just think that it is gonna come crashing down. When it comes to Mason Rudolph, I think that's an easy one. I don't think he wants to be here. I don't think the Pittsburgh Steelers want to be here. I think he'd go to the CFL or the XFL before he returned to the Pittsburgh Steelers and was their third string quarterback. And I don't see Mitch Trubisky leaving at this point. So I think those two are very easy ones. Robert Spillane goes along with that one, but I think we've both said that we think Robert returns to the Steelers this offseason. I don't think that's a big shock to anybody. I think the system fits. I don't know how many people are actually going to toss him a contract in free agency. Cheap deal, bring him back. It is what it is. All right, let's get into. Oh, you got something for Spillane?
No, just that one's kind of a no-brainer. I'm with you there. It's going to be cheap. You need that position. You need depth at that position.
Yeah. I think the next set of question marks on offense, Miles Boykin, Steven Sims, Zach Gentry. So Boykin obviously didn't do anything in the receiving game. Steven Sims came on late, but he was the kick returner. You got Calvin Austin returning this season, so you have question marks on whether or not Steven Sims has the same role. You still have Gunnar Olszewski on the roster for the next season. Do you see those two returning, those two wideouts?
I would like for them to keep Steven Sims. I feel like he's a real valuable piece. Even with Calvin Austin back, like you have no idea what Calvin's going to be. Steven Sims won't run you a big bill, but he was a good kick returner. He was a valuable kind of change of pace and some speed in an offense that really needed it. I really hope they do bring Steven Sims back.
Yeah, I think they do bring him back. I have a hard time believing that they're just going to hand Calvin Austin anything. That just doesn't. Right. That's not the Pittsburgh Steelers way. So they'll go about it the way they've gone about it in the past and make him and Steven Sims compete. And I think Calvin Austin's going to win it out, but I think Sims has a place on the roster and worst case scenario on the practice squad. When it comes to Miles Boykin, I think they bring him back too. I could see a swap there. A Gunnar Olszewski gets cut, Miles Boykin comes back, just because those two did exactly the same thing. They were dominant in the run blocking game, like phenomenal. I got to give Gunnar all the credit in the world. That dude put on a blocking clinic this past season, but Boykin was right there behind him. And I think Boykin's their best special teamer right now. Don't think they want to screw that up. I don't know what his market's going to be in a really bad wide receiver market. So if nobody signs him, I could see them bringing him back just to like secure a job. I see Miles Boykin as a guy who thinks, look, football is awesome. You got to be smart in the process, and I know who I am, and I think they could bring him back on a relatively cheap deal. Maybe get rid of Gunnar so they don't have a clogged wide receiver room like they did last year, but maybe they keep them all. I mean, you get 3 guys for all under like $5 million total. That's pretty cheap. What about Zach Gentry?
I think they do re-sign Zach Gentry too. I don't know. He's reliable. Good backup tight end option. You're not asking for a whole lot from him. And I don't think he's going to command a ton of money on the open market either. This one feels like just another get this out of the way early so that you don't have to think about it,
Yeah, I agree. And my outlook on Gentry is he's grown the last 2 seasons. he's a tight end, which most tight ends don't hit their prime until like right about 30 years old. He's only 26 years old. So do I expect him to be a superstar? No. But if everybody's looking at him and saying this is as good as he's going to get, for one, that's totally fine. That's a pretty quality backup tight end. And for two, I expect that to continue to rise. I expect his ceiling to keep going up. So I think that he's the right move. He fits well with Pat Freiermuth. Kenny Pickett loves him. The locker room loves him. The media loves him. You know, I think he's a good option. Super cheap. I don't know anybody that would offer Zach Gentry a contract right now on the open market. And I just think that, you know, when it's all said and done, he's just an easy, like, yep, come on, we'll give you whatever, and let's make it happen. Going to the defensive questionables here. Chris Wormley, who suffered an ACL injury late in the season, don't know if he's going to be back for the start of the summer. William Jackson III, who just got cut the other day for $12 million, could come back on a cheaper deal, according to Mark Kaboli. And then Marcus Allen, inside linebacker, who, you know, people like him, people don't like him, but he's played a pretty big role in Pittsburgh the last couple of years. Do you see those three returning, not returning? How do you see that playing out?
I really don't see any of those three coming back. You know, Will Jackson, I feel like Will Jackson thinks of himself a little bit higher than the deal that the Steelers can afford to give him. And I also just don't think if you don't sign Cam Sutton, maybe we're having a different conversation, but I don't know. I don't see where William Jackson fits in. I don't see where, like, would you play him over Levi Wallace, even if you don't have Cam? Yeah.
I wouldn't even play him over Ahkello Witherspoon. I think Ahkello Witherspoon was here to be the one. Even when he came back from the hamstring the first time, he was the starter. So I think they have faith in him. And if you're going to pay Ahkello Witherspoon $4 million, or you're going to pay William Jackson $6 million, you know, just give it to Ahkello and say, you could be our depth guy. Like, that's fine.
Right. Yeah. So, yeah, I don't really see where William Jackson fits in. The other name you mentioned, Chris Wormley, just they have other options, I feel like, along the defensive line, and Wormley just it's just a piece that you don't need, I don't think.
Yeah, I agree. And then Marcus Allen. Let me get your Marcus Allen take.
The thing that sticks in my head every time I hear about Marcus Allen is him getting the penalty. He just I forget what game it was. Yeah, the Panthers game where he walked over to the other huddle or the other sideline or whatever and was taunting him. That was one of the dumbest things I've ever seen. The dumbest penalties I've ever seen. So I don't really fancy myself a Marcus Allen fan, but I don't know. Like you said, he played a pretty big role in Pittsburgh last year, and it's not going to cost you a whole lot of money. I just don't know what. I don't know. Is there anything Marcus Allen does that no one else on the Steelers can do right now?
No, there's zero things that Marcus, except for play music very loud, very loudly. I look at. I'm not the biggest. Actually, I would take that back. I think Marcus Allen's a good guy. Me and him, every time we talk, it seems, you know, it's very nice. I've known him since college. Do I think he is replaceable? Very. Do I think the Pittsburgh Steelers adore this guy and think that he is a hard worker and somebody that hypes the team up and they kind of want that around? Yes. I think that if the Steelers made the Super Bowl, they would feel better if Marcus Allen was the guy waving the giant flag, running out of the tunnel first, hyping everybody up, than if they didn't have that guy. And I think that they want that Marcus Allen, so I think he stays. Plus, he's very cost efficient. I don't think he'll get an offer anywhere. The thing is that he's always going to be the 53rd guy on the roster. So, you know, if he's not good enough, or if somebody comes in here like a Mark Robinson and shows that he's the next generation of Marcus Allen's gone. Chris Wormley, I don't expect to come back just because I don't know when he'll be ready. And I don't think you sign a guy that's about to be 30 years old who just tore his ACL and say, yeah, well, you know, if you don't come back until July, that's fine. If you don't come back until October, that's also fine. I think you wait that one out. If they need some help heading into the season on the defensive line, if they realize that Isaiah Loudermilk isn't it, or whatever the case may be, maybe you bring him back then and you say, hey, come back on a cheap deal. I don't think he'd have any issues with that one. He likes Pittsburgh. I think he fits in well with the defensive line. And then William Jackson III, I think, is just gone. Like, I don't even understand how it makes sense. If you're going to draft a cornerback and say, you're our future, if you're going to re-sign Cam Sutton and say, you're our future, and then you have Levi Wallace, who's your second starter, you don't have room for him. You're going to use him as a depth piece, but I just said Ahkello Witherspoon is a much better depth piece. He fits to the defense. He's been here for 2 years, so you know what you're going to get out of him. They trusted him coming into the season. If it wasn't for a lingering hamstring injury, I think he would have played a huge role even after the A.J. Brown debacle. I think that Ahkello stays. He's your bigger depth piece. I think all 4 of those corners kind of play a big role for the Steelers this upcoming season. If anything, I think maybe they get rid of Arthur Millette. I think that's the big one. All right, I got one more for you before we go to the safeties, which I think is the biggest debate coming, and that's Benny Snell. Did I ask about Benny Snell?
No, you listed him, but you did not ask about Benny Snell.
Yeah, what do you think about Benny Snell?
What do I think about Benny Snell? I think Benny Snell has value as a football player.
Yes.
And I think I just, how much are you going to pay? Like, I feel like he's of these kind of, out of those last 3, I didn't expect any. I think Benny Snell's can make some money somewhere. And I think he's going to want to make some money somewhere.
Okay.
I don't know. Like, he's in very limited backup roles. He's been pretty competent. He like hasn't been, I don't think as bad as maybe Steelers fans maybe think he is.
Yes. Agreed.
And I feel like it's just not going to sit well with him kind of getting pushed down the depth chart. And I feel like he's going to try to find somewhere where he can play a little bit of a bigger role. And I feel like he's at that kind of point in his career where he's looking for something bigger.
Yep. I 100% agree. I think that Benny Snell is a very valuable 3-yard rusher, which is very valuable in the NFL. Like not everybody's got to break out 80-yard runs. If you could get us 4 yards as a backup running back, you got to feel very good about it. And he showed he could do that. You stepped in against Indianapolis, literally no reps before that, and said,
right.
"Yo, guys, I'm just fine. Just let me cook for a little bit."
Right.
He's very good at that. He's a very, very good pass protector. And one of the best blocking or running back pass protectors I've seen in Pittsburgh in the last 5 years. Very, very good. And he's a great special teamer. He is just like you said, he's a very valuable football player. If Najee Harris wasn't a much better spitting image of this guy, he'd have a role in Pittsburgh. But there's no point in him having a role in Pittsburgh. I think when James Conner was your running back and Le'Veon Bell was your running back, and Jalen Samuels was in the backfield in the mix and Anthony McFarland, you had a role for Benny Snell. Right now, you don't. I think another team is going to offer him a deal and say, hey, look, we could actually use you. You could be a backup here and run 4 or 5 times a game and play some special teams and catch some passes. And I think he'll go for that. I think he deserves that because I think like we both just said, I think he's a valuable football player and I do expect him to leave. I hope he makes some money. I think Benny Snell's a good guy. So I would be all about that. But I think that's an easy one for him. I don't think there'll be any ill will. And I think that he leaves. The big one here, DeMonte KZ and Terrell Edmonds. There are reports that DeMonte KZ and the Steelers have mutual interest in making a deal work to return. He's about to be 30 years old this season. Terrell Edmonds, on the other hand, is hitting the free agent market for the second time. Last time he waited it out. He was one of the last safeties to sign. Came back on a very, very cheap deal for the Pittsburgh Steelers. He's back out there again. How do you see the safety market shaping up for the Steelers?
Yeah, I'm a little worried about Edmonds. Because I feel like they'll need him. I feel like they need him. I feel like they really should bring him back. He's just such a good player. He's just such a good player and a good fit, and I feel like he deserves a contract from the Steelers, but I don't know. I feel like he's going to, like you said, like he's going to wait it out, and I don't think he's going to accept I don't know if you can consider that a hometown discount, but he's going to get his money. I feel like wherever it comes from. I don't think he's going to be particularly married to staying with the Steelers again just to stay with the Steelers. I think he's going to look for his money somewhere.
Yeah, I agree. I think that this is a Juju Smith-Schuster type situation. You signed a team-friendly deal because you didn't have a market year one. You come back, you have a much better season. Although Juju didn't have a much better season, but the wide receiver market opened. You hit it the second time. And I think all it takes is one team to offer this guy a bigger contract than what the Pittsburgh Steelers are going to give him. I don't think the Pittsburgh Steelers are going to go over $4 million, maybe $5 million for this guy. I think somebody somewhere could say, "Hey, we'll give you $7 million. We'll give you $7 million for the season, or for 2 years." And you say, "Oh, okay, cool." And I think he's gone. I don't think Terrell Edmonds is a guy that's here to stay in Pittsburgh because he loves the city of Pittsburgh. I do think he loves the Pittsburgh Steelers. I don't think it's anything other than that, but I think he's a businessman and he's looking at it and saying, "Look, this is a business and I got a better business offer, so I'm going to go take it." And I think he leaves. And I think the Steelers have an easier time with that because I think they keep KZ. And I think they signed KZ before Edmonds so that security blanket is in place, because somebody is going to anticipate a team offering him a deal and them having to possibly match it. I do think there's a number. I think it's like right around that $5 million mark where they'll say, "Oh, okay, well, we'll give you that much money too." But if somebody tosses him just a little bit extra, there's just no, like, he's just not going to come back, and he's going to go wherever he needs, and hopefully he continues to thrive. But I think that's the most shocking move that comes this offseason is I think Terrell Edmonds is gone and the Steelers are going to rock with KZ and Minka. And then I think they're going to have to go get another safety somewhere.
Where do you think that safety is going to come from? Is it going to be free agent? You think they're going to draft one? Where do you?
Oh, that's a tough one because I think that changes a lot. Especially if it's before the draft. Like if Terrell Edmonds signs before the draft. Last year it was right before the draft, and then KZ signed the last night of the draft. I could see them doing that again, where KZ's the guy, and then they wait it out and see what veteran is still on the market right after the draft that they could sign for literally nothing. I could also see guys sliding in the NFL draft and them saying, "Well, hell, man, Brian Branch is one heck of a player, loves Minka Fitzpatrick. They got a great relationship together. Why not him?" Or Trey Dean out of Florida, or, JK or JL Skinner out of Boise State, big dude, pretty much another Terrell Edmonds. There's some names out there that maybe they're like, maybe we figure this out. Maybe they move Arthur Millette back to safety, have him be that third safety. I don't know. I don't know how they go about it, but I think that it'll immediately move the bar on their draft. Everybody who put out a mock draft of the Pittsburgh Steelers will have to rethink everything by the end of the week. I think that Terrell Edmonds gets signed by the end of next week. That's how quickly I think he gets a deal.